Oh my goodness, there's so many games. Like, Once Human just came out, First Descendant, um, Throne and Liberty, and now Dungeonborne. Oh, I can't keep up. But yeah, I don't think I have enough space on my computer. So we're gonna go ahead and see if the game is even worth downloading. Let's rely on this person. This is obviously the playtest, not the official release, so there are things that are going to be changed or slightly different. But we're just going to go on this for now, since I couldn't find anything else. Probably turn on closed caption, even though it's auto-generated.
Around with the new game Dungeonborne, which is a competitor to Dark and Darker and is a old school fantasy extraction dungeon.
I didn't even
game.
play Dark
So
and
I want to give
Darker.
my feedback on the game overall and just a review of it as it stands right now.
It didn't look good for me.
Dungeonborne is very much a competitor to Dark and Darker. In fact, they're almost the same game as far as the audience they're going for and the general experience. But they do have some differences in the classes that they offer, some of the encounters, the PvE experience versus the PvP experience, and also the queues that they have and everything in between.
I want to hear about the
PvE. One thing that I
PvE.
think stands out the most about Dungeonborne, especially relative to Dark and Darker, and that is going to be the general polish level. This isn't like a major knock on Dark and Darker, but more just that there's just a lot more polish and fluidity to the game. At least
I'm choosing
in my
her. Are you
opinion,
kidding me?
compared to Dark and Darker, which feels very
I don't
clunky
need you.
and old school, and that is part of
Pick the
Dark and
waifu.
Darker's charm, where it feels like everything's cumbersome, everything's kind of old school. You're like having to hike uphill through the snow both ways to get to school kind of thing. But it is kind of nice to have a little bit more shine on a game that you're playing through as well. There's not a whole bunch of merchants. There's a single trade option for that as well. And there's also a bunch of quality of life things, like, for example,
I thought those were characters I could...
about Dark and Darker is the fact that you can't swap things by putting them on top
I
of
am
each
not
other
paying attention
in
to
the
my...
menu, but
Let me
you
just
can.
hit myself real quick.
Everything's just snappier and a little bit more polished in Dungeonborne, which I can appreciate, and I think some people would appreciate as well. On top of that, there's a bunch of quality life as well. You can get multiple stash tabs that all have this shared. This is shared by default, and you don't carry gold coins around in the game. You actually have a complete
I actually like
shared
the inventory
gold
like
account
this. It's
that as soon
kind
as
of
you
fun
exit
to
a game
like
with gold coins in your inventory,
move stuff
it
around.
automatically joins your gold coffer chest, this ethereal chest that you get as a currency number in the top right corner of the screen, and that's shared across all characters. So as you're farming gold and getting more and more gold, you're just increasing your gold count without having to store it or buy bags or trade bags between players. The next thing to talk about is the class design for the game. Is they kind of go in different directions with the way that you want to build your character. So for example, especially in Dark and Darker, you have a lot more flexibility with the classes that you have, right? So like if you look at a class in Dungeonborne, you have two abilities. These abilities are fixed. You can't change them, you can't swap them, they are fixed for that class. You will always have a Q and an E, your ability 1 and your ability 2, and they will stay the same always. Then you have passive skills that either modify the character or modify one or both of your abilities, and you don't choose these either. So you have a fixed 2 set of abilities, and then you have these 5 passives that come with the character that you don't slot into some kind of talent build, but rather
the classes
it's based
are
on the gear
pre-built.
that you have. So all of the passive abilities that a class has are activated by reaching stat thresholds. So a certain amount of strength, a certain amount of dexterity, a certain amount of stamina. When you go to your character and you go down to the bottom, you can see that if I had 23 stamina from gear,
that's
it would activate
interesting.
one of my passives as part of that condition. If I get
I
60
actually
stamina,
like
it activates
that.
another.
That's
And some
actually
of these can
cool.
be
Are you kidding me?
extremely powerful and can greatly
That's
improve
awesome.
your class's power, but you need to have a lot of gear in order to put that online.
That
So
makes it
without
feel
that,
more
you
like an
run out of
RPG,
gear.
like
your character
actually.
class gets a lot weaker.
That's a cool
because of
method.
that.
I like
Whereas
that.
with a game like Dark and Darker, which has that customization up front, you can choose your 2 abilities from a large list of abilities. You can choose your passives and how they modify, and then put gear on top of that. There's a lot more customization from Dungeonborne that focuses on the gear itself, and there's going to be hopefully
I love
more
gear
classes.
grinding.
And that's
Gear
how
loot.
I see the system
gear
for
looting?
Dungeonborne,
How
is
do
that
you
the
call
classes
it?
themselves
Holy
in general are simpler than the class
But you know what I
design
mean.
for Dark
I'm a
and
loot
Darker, which
goblin.
doesn't necessarily mean that
I go
it's a
around
bad
dungeons
thing.
being
I
like,
just
oh,
think it
that's
gives
mine.
room for
That's
a lot
mine.
more classes, right? Because you could split like the warlock up in Dark and Darker into like 4 or 5 different
Is that
play
Eminem?
styles, demon play style, life tap play style, that sort of thing, in order to actually get multiple play styles because they're more fixed and rigid in that way. The basic functionalities are there in Dungeonborne. You will be able to craft permanent weapons if you want to use them based on the materials that you collect. There's also a alchemist that you can use to pick up items and things like that. And there is a single merchant which you
I
can
want
quickly use to sell
to
items
talk
to,
with the
or
merchant.
buy basic items. They don't have the best items you can buy, but they are good enough to get you going if you want to jump into
I
a
want
game
to speak with the
and
merchant.
start killing. The auction house system is also incredibly streamlined. Like, it's not as like heavy as like a normal auction house. All of this comes down to, like, you look for the exact slot you want, you're going to buy it from someone based on the prices that exist on the curve. The functionality is there, and it's way faster and way cleaner. So you will lose out on some of like the true bizarre like aspects that you get in like a full auction house system where everyone has an entry that you're going through, whereas this is more like Korean MMO where you just look for an item and see what the prices are based on who has put this item up for auction. And you also randomly get the modifiers when it comes down to you when you buy it from the auction house as well, which means the prices are generally just cheaper. It's a lot less haggling,
No, the
and a
listings
lot
still
less
look
back
the
and
same
forth,
though.
but it means that the auction house can be faster and
Like
more
where you're going through
streamlined.
each one.
For some people, that's going to be a positive. For some people, that's going to be a negative. And it depends
just
on
looks
how
like one
invested
extra
you are in
menu,
the
though.
trading system overall. Now, that's the buyout trade portion of the auction house, which I think is really clean and very straightforward. There is a pure bid system, which functions more like a true like bid when you get it, and it is the exact stats based on where that is. So if you wanted to get something really quick, you could buy it for cheaper off the auction house with random stats from other players.
That's what I'll do.
If you don't, and you want to get something very specific, like this is
If I even do that.
specific item that someone found, a legendary mace, you can bid on this to get higher and higher a value on that. And
You know what I might do? I might, even if I get like good equipment I'm not gonna use, I'm just gonna give it to the merchant.
Well. So they have
I'm not giving it to everyone else. You kidding me? I'm just gonna give it to her.
A very cool, simplified auction house, which gets you what you need and helps you from getting into games when you lose your gear because someone took you out. You can actually just get back into a game with a quick set of gear fast.
Is
by
it a
using their
roguelike?
buyout system. It does have quests just like Dark and Darker. The UI is very simple and straightforward.
Oh, forget that. I'm keeping everything then.
The UI you get in Dark and Darker, where you have to go through each individual merchant, get the quests. Again, this is just kind of like a more polished quality of life version. But here are all the quests you can complete. They're automatically accepted. You don't have to go and accept them and then do them. They're all. It's like a
I don't know if I'm gonna like this.
Quest log.
Roguelikes really tick me off, especially if PvP is involved.
Now, when it comes to the actual queues, I like some of the
Unless it's
options they have
possible that I
here.
could
So
just
rather
do
than rotating
PvE
queues,
and then
all of
it's
these are
my
fixed.
fault.
They have a casual version and a classic version.
But I don't
which
like
has
the
a
one where
gear
like
score
people
requirement, which is
troll
nothing
or
new
like
for this kind
spawn
of genre.
camp
There
and
is
whatnot.
going to be the circle that encloses. This is the one thing that I think Dark and Darker did well, is they removed the battle royale closing in circle that comes in. I don't like that in games like this unless the maps are designed that way, just because it just feels really rough. I'd rather that the enemies get much more dangerous, or like hazards show up, rather than this forced area to go down to a specific spot, because I think it takes away from the exploration aspect of these.
They got all the modes,
games, but it does exist here, and I hope that they have more options to remove it in the future. So you have your core, your casual and classic for a tier 1 dungeon, and they have a much harder dungeon with a lot more dangerous enemies in it that you'll probably want to bring a group for, or you can do casual and classic on this as well, and hopefully they end up adding more maps to this on top of that. Next, they have a competitive modes. They actually have a death match that you can queue for if you just want to PvP. I think this is awesome.
I kind of want.
People don't end up.
Is
just
there like a
doing
random
this
matchmaking
but if
that I can do?
It is kind of a core niche of the PvE VP genre that we're seeing here.
For PvE, because like
I think is fun, especially if you have different. And this is all fixed.
I don't
as
really
well.
have
They give
anyone
you the equipment.
that would
you can't bring
play.
any equipment in, and you don't lose any
actually,
items because you didn't bring any items
I'll be fine.
as well. So you can actually have that protection. It's just for like an
But
equalized PvP experience if you wanted to do 3v3, which is pretty awesome. I think it's like old Dark Messiah of Might and Magic experience, which we don't really have much of nowadays. Next is something that is also very weird. I like how they kind of went out on a limb with some of these mechanics to make things super different, and that is their mithril order queue. This is something that I'm not sure how I feel about it yet. I like the concept of it, and I think it's really cool. I just haven't run into enough.
I don't know. This is definitely a game where you'd rather play with the friends than like a stranger.
The way this is if you queue for the
That's what it's
Castle
looking
or
like.
Sinner's End, you'll go into the match with the queue you have. So you're in the normal campfire. You have your normal loadout. You can bring items in. You can fight, and then if you queue up for these and then you perish, you will lose the items that you have with you. Like you won't actually have. Death is permanent. You'll lose everything with you. There is another option that coincides with this, and that is the mithril order. So if you queue for the mithril order, it'll take you to a different screen. So you'd have like a brighter camp here. And with the Mithril Order, you have a fixed set of 3 classes. You have the Melee Mithril Order, the Caster Mithril Order, and the Rogue Mithril Order.
They all
have
look
their
scary.
own abilities and they have their own passives, but the downside with the Mithril Order is you can't bring any items. You have a fixed set of loot that you can't change. You have a fixed set of, like, it's a full, government issue Mithril Order set of gear and
you
items,
are
and you can
entirely
unlock
a
new abilities and
preset.
things like that. So it's this fixed set of very straightforward.
Why would anyone play this
PKing
mode?
Style game, and these will queue with normal players in the normal dungeons. So
Really?
they don't risk losing anything, but they can't get quite as strong as someone who brought gear into the dungeon. So if you don't like the extraction portion of the game, they have a different queue option for you, so you can still play. You can just keep diving as a Mithril Order Knight, or a Devout, or a Caster, or a Rogue, and just jump in there and fight players, and if you lose, you lose, you jump out, you jump back in. It creates a new enemy type for the players that are doing extraction to face off against. I've definitely died to Mithril enemies, like Mithril players that were in my game, and they showed up with their robes and their crazy hats, and they started attacking me. It's part of the gameplay, and it's part of the core queue. You get
That's
unique
intriguing.
crafting materials from it, like ores and stuff that you can use to craft better items. So if you
I
have
feel like
no
this isn't
money
gonna be
and
my
you have
kind of
no
game, but I'll
gear and you
still
don't wanna buy
probably have to
anything,
give it a
you
try.
can queue as a Mithril Order character in the normal queue and fight with a full set of gear against enemies and get crafting material, unlock new abilities, and it's like a separate style of play mixed into the normal matchmaking, which I think is fun and interesting and something new. Now, one of my favorite things about Dungeonborne in general is that you get in and out of games fast. The game performs well, at least on my PC. It runs well, and it loads quickly as well, which means that you die, you lose your gear, you get
How dare
upset,
you
go
mention
right
your
back into
PC
the game,
without
you pop
showing
in and
stats.
out very, very
Where's your
quickly.
specs?
Now, there is something that is worth discussing around Dungeonborne, especially as it compares to its competitor, and that is going to be the level of intricacy and difficulty for the PvE encounters in this.
This is
Overall,
nice.
Dungeonborne plays much faster, much tighter, and more aggressively.
I
than
didn't even
Dark
know it
and
was the
Darker.
first
Dark and
person
Darker is
mode.
quite slow,
That's
but with
nice.
Dungeonborne, you can cast a spell, switch over.
I thought it was
cast
gonna be
another
like a
spell, go in,
top-down.
start chopping. Like, you can move quickly, use quickly, pull things out fast. Like, the game is more fast-paced.
Yo, I
than,
can
its
backstab people
competitor
easy.
is. And on top of that, the PvE itself is more threatening. This can be a kind of a polarizing decision for the game. I think it makes the PvE more interesting, but also adds another question, a layer of questioning around the PvP itself as well. Because the enemies in Dungeonborne, not only do they have more aggression on them, they also have more attacks. They have attack chains, they can mix up attacks. Sometimes they will do a random, like, lunge attack or a jump attack that they don't do
I feel
all
like
the
my
time.
friends are gonna play
There's
this.
also a bunch of bosses and mini
Yep, yep,
bosses
yep,
that all
yep,
have
yep.
phases to them. They can summon ads. They all have abilities and things like that. Sometimes they'll do charge attacks, run attacks, leap attacks, slide attacks.
Why is he
Like,
so
they have all these
slow?
kind of crazy mechanics. And it's a lot
I'm losing
more
my voice.
focused on a more diverse and healthy PvE system.
Why are
but
you so
again,
slow?
That is something that's a little bit different compared to a game that's PvP, PvE, because what happens if you have a big werewolf on you, or a big lich on you, or a big enemy on you that's attacking you, and then you get into a PvP situation, you get surrounded by someone else. So I think that is another kind of differing element for Dungeonborne that we'll have to see how it goes. In general, I think I like it, but there's definitely times where I feel like I started a fight with a mob right when a player showed up.
Yeah.
It feels like a lot more of a detriment in Dungeonborne than it
That's
is
actually
in Dark and
definitely
Darker.
how
So
I'd play.
deciding to start
I would
a
wait until
PvE
the
encounter
player
where
is,
you
like,
know there are other players
fighting a
walking
mob, and I'm just
around
like,
is a
"Yipe!"
much bigger decision in
Jump
this
them.
game than its competitor. Like, you have enemies that have like 2-hit attacks that they can link into 3-hit attacks. Sometimes they can do mix-ups where they'll start, pause, pretend they're not going to do it. Like right there, this is a special ability for the ghosts. They
That's
can
scary.
one-shot some
Are you
classes.
kidding
That's
me?
probably what killed me in one hit. That special ability that they have. Sometimes they go ethereal and float away when
That's
others
creepy.
move forward. Like, it's just a lot more elegant and a lot more involved, and they can surprise you with abilities you didn't know they had, or with different attacks that they didn't show before, which can make it a lot more interesting.
It's like
as a
Fatal
PvP
Frame, but
game,
with the
again,
sword.
can make it harder if you're trying to fight players at the same time. Another thing I love about Dungeonborne is the fact that you actually have a full map that you can open in the middle of the match. It shows where everything is on the map, and you can also see where all the bosses are. So there's a Minotaur spawned here, there's an Executioner spawned here. All of these bosses have pretty, more advanced encounters with abilities and functionality.
This
You'll
is
have a
one of
chance to
those
drop more
games
loot and also
where
control
I'm
more
such a
players too.
scaredy
So I'm
cat
gonna
to
show you what
play
I mean by
alone
aggroing
that I'm gonna
this
beg
boss
one of
here,
my
the
friends to
werewolf.
play
So he
this with
actually
me.
has like 3 different
Like,
stances
I
that he
kid
can
you
be in.
not,
He can be on
that
all
ghost
fours, and he
thing,
will lunge and jump and slide
that's
at
where I
you.
draw the
He also
line.
has like 1-hit attacks, 2-hit combo attacks, 3-hit combo attacks, and 4-hit combo attacks as well. And
Look
he'll
at the
mix
giant
them.
rat.
So you get all these
Ah.
crazy situations. So this is like a
I
2-hit,
want to
this is a
ride it.
3-hit slam. He has a 4-hit. So he's got almost like some like 3D action, like Souls-like mechanics that go along
Monkey.
with it. And depending on how that goes, he
Monkey.
can get really aggressive. Then he enters a
Monkey.
phase 2 where he stays on all fours all the time and he's super fast. You fight minotaurs that have charge attacks and leap attacks, or they'll go into a running stance where they'll charge at you. Liches can teleport, blink, disappear, and you have some of these mechanics in Dark and Darker, but I think a lot of these become a lot faster and more aggressive in this game, which can change up how you play and also when you have other players attacking you as well. If you found value in today's
I
video, leave a
did.
like down
Thank
below,
you.
leave a
Yeah, be sure to go to his go to the original video that is gonna be down in the description. Give him lots of love. I don't know about the game itself though. I'm sure you guys will try this out, right? I mean, most of the people that's watching this on my channel are more like gacha players and anime enthusiasts like myself. But I don't know. Would you guys be willing to give this a shot? It's a little scary. I mean, I wouldn't mind playing with you guys as well. Just, leave it in the comments and maybe we can join up. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this. The game itself looks cool. This is during the playtest. If I had to say a rating for it from just impressions alone, it's like a 7 out of 10. Because I would like a more streamlined PvE experience, and I'm sure others do too. But at the same time, it makes sense to have that the way it is. So it's more of a personal preference at that point. Character customization would be nice too. I can't think of anything else right now, but yeah. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys next time with hopefully more Dungeonborne. Bye.